Hey, brother! Ben, despite it being maybe one of the biggest questions since even the first trailer dropped for Fantastic Beasts, it's not one we have really addressed until today. And that question is, why is Dumbledore teaching defense against the dark arts? Quick announcement before we begin. Just wanted to let you guys know that we have started a brand new series of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate over on Super Carlin Gaming, where me, Ben, Derek, and Jordan are answering all of your questions and giving somewhat okay advice, but also dishing out some ice cold justice with none other than Spring Break Bowser. And if you're wondering what is Spring Break Bowser, well, you'll just have to head over to the gaming channel to find out. See you there, Super Carlin Gaming. Ben Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore is first introduced to us in the Harry Potter books as the greatest and most brilliant wizard of the age, and of course, the headmaster at the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And a fan of 10-pin bowling, but I mean, who isn't? As the books and movies have unfolded, we have learned more and more about his crazy backstory and why, of all things, he decided to settle for being the principal of a high school when he could have literally done just about anything else he could have ever wanted to do. Like, we always see Dumbledore from Harry's perspective, so it makes sense that the headmaster is the most powerful person, at least, you know, from like a high schooler's point of view. But if you extrapolate this out into the real world, imagine if, for example, your high school principal was the most respected person alive. Anyway, in Chamber of Secrets though, we learned that it even goes one step further, that when Tom Riddle opened the Chamber of Secrets, Dumbledore didn't even start as the headmaster. First, he was just part of the regular staff, and he was the Transfiguration teacher, which I think we all thought was just so fitting. I mean, in present day for Harry, Professor McGonagall is the Transfiguration teacher, and she's the head of Gryffindor House, which I think we all thought was just so fitting, because in present day, Harry Potter's Transfiguration teacher is Professor McGonagall, and she's the head of Gryffindor House. And of course, Gryffindors are all the good guys.
The change of decoration is in order.
And if Dumbledore had the same position in the past as the head of the good guys in the present, well, that's just all the more meaningful, right? Made perfect sense to me, and I never really gave it a second thought until last year when a certain trailer dropped and we saw one Albus Dumbledore teaching his students how to fight a Boggart Remus Lupin style. Which brings up its own set of confusing thoughts, like, wait, did Lupin learn how to teach this lesson from Dumbledore? But no, that doesn't make sense, because even if he did use to teach defense against the dark arts, certainly he wouldn't still be teaching it by the time Lupin got there. Plus, I always just loved that Lupin came up with this Boggart idea himself and that he was teaching it to the students in this really cool and practical way, and it added to his mystique. But if Dumbledore did it first, then it just sort of like takes away from that a little. Like, is it just on the third year syllabus? Because when you first learn about it, Lupin's like, oh, you found a Boggart? I have an idea! I'll admit though, when I saw Dumbledore teaching this lesson, my first reaction was one of extreme confusion. Like, what? He can't do that. He doesn't teach defense against the dark arts, he teaches transfiguration. What are you doing? How could you mess this up, movie? And naturally, us being who we are, we try to defend the movie and rationalize it out as much as possible. Well, he is teaching about Boggarts, and what are Boggarts if not masters of transfiguration? Maybe this does fit, maybe it is transfiguration. In fact, it doesn't even seem out of reach for Dumbledore to try and bend the rules and his transfiguration classes into actual sort of semi-anti-dark arts classes. Like, that seems kind of Dumbledore-y. Right? Today, students, we will be learning how to transfigure oncoming attackers into regular non-attackers by disarming them. Say it with me now. Expelliarmus! Basic transfiguration, but alas, no, that is definitely not the case. After you've seen Crimes of Grindelwald, it is 100% confirmed he was teaching defense against the dark arts, not transfiguration. Which, like, okay, fine, I guess it's okay for him to have been teaching that first. I mean, why not? Because I'll tell you why not. Allow me to direct your attention to a particular passage from Half-Blood Prince, where Dumby and Harry are deep diving into Valdy's past. Which job did he want, sir? What subject did he want to teach? Somehow Harry knew the answer before Dumbledore gave it. Defense against the dark arts. It was being taught at the time by an old professor by the name of Galatea Merrythought, who had been at Hogwarts for nearly 50 years. Nearly 50 years? How could you be nearly 50 years? God, shut up, Hermione. It's like 49 or something. But that doesn't necessarily rule Dumbledore out. I mean, he's like a bazillion years old.
Give or take a few years.
Yeah, awkward laughter aside, 50 years when you're like a bazillion is like the blink of an eye. So as long as that particular 50 years doesn't intersect with that particular time frame, we should be good. So it's just a matter of figuring out when that job request by Voldemort was made. Now, everyone remembers when Voldemort came back to the school to request the Defense Against the Dark Art job from Dumbledore, because that's also when he hid the diadem. But you may have forgotten that that is actually the second time Voldemort is applying for the job. The first time is with Armando Dippet when he is 18 years old and fresh out of Hogwarts. And from there, it's pretty simple math. Voldemort was born in 1926, plus 18 years is 1944, minus 50 for the career of Merrythought, and that lands us at 1894, or 95, 96, depends on the amount of nearliness you want to count in the nearly 50 years. But either way, Crimes of Grindelwald takes place in 1927, and if I understand how counting works, I'm pretty sure that 1927 is greater than 1894, but less than 1944, meaning that crud. Merrythought was indeed still teaching at Hogwarts during the time in which we see Dumbledore teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts. Like, what gives? Obviously something isn't adding up here, but not nothing. A lot of things actually do add up here. Like, to me, it actually makes more sense that Dumbledore would be teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts instead of Transfiguration. Because at that point in his life, he would have had those couple of months with Grindelwald where he was dabbling in dark arts and dreaming of leading the wizards out of hiding and ruling over the muggles. He would have already had the three-way duel with Aberforth and Grindelwald, which ended in the death of his sister Ariana, where he learned that he is not to be trusted with power. And heck, we know he goes on to form a secret organization against the dark arts, the Order of the Phoenix. He almost certainly should be teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts, and yet we have another account from Dumbledore of a different teacher teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts during that same time frame. Or do we? Going back to the original quote, it was being taught at the time by an old professor by the name of Galatea Merrythought, who had been at Hogwarts for nearly 50 years. It doesn't actually say Merrythought was teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts for her entire 50 years at Hogwarts. Now, I know that feels like maybe a bit of a technicality, but stick with me. It's definitely possible, and now that Crimes of Grindelwald is out, actually probably just true that both Merrythought and Dumbledore just taught different subjects during their time at Hogwarts. And like we just said, that actually makes more sense for Dumbledore given his very recent history. And I think it just adds another layer of mystique to that particular position, which is already covered in such mystery throughout the Harry Potter series, having been jinxed by Voldemort in 1945 after Dumbledore refused to give him the job. After which Dumbledore later would tell Harry they've never been able to keep a professor at that position for longer than a year, which is kind of bonkers. Like, I'm sorry, when does Harry get there? 1991, and this jinx happened in 1945? Are you telling me there have been 46 consecutive years of a new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor and nobody has like raised their eyebrows at that yet? In fact, you might even be thinking to yourself, is that even accurate? What about Quirrell? He was there for a couple of years, right? Which would seem to undo this because Hagrid definitely knew him as a professor before Harry got there, and yet he's teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts during Harry's first year, so how does that work? Pretty similar to Dumbledore and Merrythought, actually. In fact, J.K. Rowling has even confirmed in an interview that Quirrell did teach at the school for many years, but only taught Defense Against the Dark Arts his last year. Before that, he taught Muggle Studies. But so back to the problem of the 46 consecutive years of a new professor, because I think we might actually have a solution for that as well. Which weirdly, although maybe not surprisingly, Muggle Studies is another position Voldemort seems to take issue with, having obviously killed Quirrell, but then also Charity Burbage at Malfoy Manor. Dumbledore specifically tells Harry, "Oh, he definitely wanted the Defense Against the Dark Arts job," said Dumbledore. "The aftermath of our little meeting proved that. You see, we have never been able to keep a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher for longer than a year since I refused the post to Lord Voldemort." For me, that always just meant they had to keep getting a new professor every single year. But I think I might have a new interpretation of this line, which is that they were only ever able to keep a new hire at that position for a single year. So I think that during some of the intervening years that Dumbledore himself would fill in for Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, possibly even for several year stints in a row, which actually ends up solving a myriad of other problems. First, it means people would be less likely to notice the odd pattern of hiring a brand new teacher for the same position education every single year for nearly half a century, and it would mean that Dumbledore himself actually could have been the one to teach Lupin, which would add a whole new layer of awesomeness to the whole Boggart scene. And it could explain the particular high skill, age range, and X-house of so many members of the Order of the Phoenix, which is to say highly skilled, early 20s, and ex-Gryffindors. Do you see just how perfect that would end up being, that Dumbledore wouldn't want Tom Riddle to have the job because he would end up using it as a recruitment tool, so instead he just did it himself and did the exact same thing in reverse? Oh, I love it, and it just like totally adds up and answers so many weird questions. Yes, Travers does tell him at the end of Crimes of Grindelwald he would never teach Defense Against the Dark Arts again, but honestly, after Dumbledore is the headmaster, like, who's gonna stop him? Nobody. That's who. And that is why Dumbledore is teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts in Crimes of Grindelwald. Then my question for you and everyone else is, what do you think? Did Dumbledore occasionally take up the post of Defense Against the Dark Arts between 1945 and when Harry arrived at the school? Did he actually teach Lupin about the Boggart? Let me know your thoughts in the towel section down below. Hey, do you like lions, snakes, eagles, or breakfast? Well, then this shirt is for you. Show off your house pride with our lions, snakes, eagles, or cakes shirt. Available now at SuperCarlinBrothers.store. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Please leave a like on it if you haven't already, and subscribe so you don't miss any future Harry Potter action from us. If you would like to see the explanation for McGonagall in Crimes of Grindelwald, you can check out this video right here. Or if you'd like to see our theory about Dumbledore's dark twin, you can check out this video right here. But Ben, that's all I've got for you today, man. I will see you in another life, brother.